Well, hello, creatives, community, and kind folks. Welcome to RPG with DBJ. I am your host, DBJ, and today is Third Pillar Thursday. One of my favorite, although we've kind of eliminated Mondays and Tuesdays just because real life has issues with us going live Monday through Friday, unfortunately. But Third Pillar Thursdays, Third Pillar of Exploration Thursdays are one of my favorites. And so we got to talk about it. Now, in the context of what we were talking about these 3 days, Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, we're talking about monstrous races in our favorite tabletop role playing games. Of course, the world's most popular one, Dungeons and Dragons, but there's many others. And one of the things that I think we could pull some threads on to make the gaming experience really exciting and unique is not to forget that not only are there some really cool, monstrous, creative racial types that we can come up with and delve into the details in terms of whether it's the foods they eat or the social behaviors that they have taken to a logical extreme or something like that. But I think it's also the places they live. And while we get a lot of hints of those in a lot of like intellectual properties, whether they're books or graphic novels or movies, TV shows, I think we could even turn the dial up just a little bit more and come up with some great places. Hey, Palora, hope you brought the darkness today. Jason Melton. And also, just before just a little bit of a preamble. Sorry, I know I'm starting to feel that I'm going to become one of these like 20-minute announcement podcasts or something before the real show starts. So I really don't want to get that way, but I do have to get this out. Have to get this out the way. The page for the massive ENWorld project of a 3-book Kickstarter is now open. The opening page is open for Kickstarter if you want to be notified when it finally goes live. But the page is open now. If you go to Kickstarter, or heck, if you're a regular a person who likes to visit ENWorld, you'll see that there in one of the title pages there, it'll take you to a Kickstarter for Level Up 5e. Now that's advanced edition of 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. It's basically every element of the game has been rewritten with new rules, and the reason why I am promoting it, of course, is because I'm a writer on it, or a contributing writer. I'm a single nail in the stick frame foundation of a giant series, so a little small part. But I was brought in to help with the exploration pillar, which is it's a fully realized pillar unto itself. So Level Up 5e, that's their website for it. And then in the Kickstarter, of course, the whole project is called Level Up 5e. It's kind of cool. But anyway, that part of it. And I've been working on the Creators Conclave website. It's not, unfortunately, not yet. You really can't even search it on Google. You got to type it in directly. But slowly and surely, I'm adding a number of the conclavers to it, and there's little details in there. I'm not a web hoster, so I'm having a little bit of issues, but I might be slow, but I'm not stupid. So I'm figuring those things out. Hey, everybody. By the way, there's some faces I see. So thank you very much for being here. Mike says, a people are defined by their environment and available resources. Monstrous races are no different. These elements will determine what and how they eat, what and how they hunt and gather, and what they wear. And I think sometimes we lose a little sight of that just because we're so comfortable with um, not just our modern day sensibilities, but our modern context of ancient sensibilities, especially in fantasy gaming. And with monstrous races, I think sometimes we will lose sight of that, and we should start to embrace a little bit more of that, even if it's something as simple as, like, for example, uh, going barefoot or not, or what kind of clothing you wear in a desert region versus an Arctic region versus a tropical region or something, and then playing a little bit with that as well. Like, would if your culture and or racial type, even if they're monstrous, is a coastal race, is that different than a fully aquatic race or a cliffside race or something? And of course, listen, maybe race is probably the incorrect term. You could go for like species or breed or some kind of genetic differentiation, and then you could, of course, flip in. Maybe there's a culture that a bunch of different genetic types all adhere to. Like, for example, there might be a islander or coastal culture, and then your monstrous race just happens to be part of that. An example would be something really, really out there, like Aquaman and the Atlanteans, and how they have these different. Over time, different writers have come in, and you've got the so-called seven seas, and there are these seven different cultures underneath the ocean waves. Mm-mm-mm. Yeah, Mike says it reminds me I have to set up a website for my articles. Yeah, yeah, it's more tedious than anything. It's not really difficult. It's tedious making sure you dot all the i's and cross all the t's. It's like editing. Editing is and editing and layout are like the hidden arts of like publication, and no one notices them unless they're not done right. And the same thing with web hosting. Like, everyone knows what a bad website looks like, and everyone notices it, but it's difficult to put your finger on the correct ones. All right. So anyway, Mike says, example, white dragonborn in one campaign were a tribal people who lived in the world's tundra. They would hunt for seals, fish, bears, and such. Yep. A local Arctic briar grew locally that provided. Is it not showing? You continue your comment. Now, I think something else that's I think would be kind of a cool thing to do is take a trope that's a very fantasy Dungeons and Dragons thing and expand on it. So oftentimes we have ourselves our local village, a tavern in it, uh, a hodgepodge group of heroes are gathered together. They're given a quest by a MacGuffin, and they go out into the wider world. And then, of course, we have our dungeon with all of our monsters in it. And it kind of makes me think, like, well, if players are really intent on playing monstrous races, why wouldn't they then be the ones to go out into the uncharted places in the world and make their own havens? Living in the dungeon, living in the caves and the tunnels or cliff sides and whatnot. And I think it would be a great reward to give players a couple of room cavern or something. Or, I mean, how many players have don't have a floating castle? Players are going to want to keep it, right? And especially with like monstrous races, if there's like talking about the white dragonborn, how cool would it be to have a base of operations that's on an ice flow or something? It's an iceberg, and the top 10% is what you can see, but the bottom 90% is like underneath the waves and these deep caverns in the ice. And the players have to use, I don't know, ice magic to make sure that it doesn't melt away when it goes into the warmer regions or something, or literally they fall asleep and wake up bumping up next to the next adventure or something. I mean, I think there's some great space to involve players who are maybe trying to carve their carve their own niche down in the tunnels of the Underdark, and the players themselves, the monstrous races that they play, are just happen to be one faction amongst many down in the dungeon. And maybe I don't know if you want to go so far as to have them set up pit traps and collapsing ceiling traps or something like that, but I think there's space to have fun. And how cool would it be for players to even requisition, I don't know, gnomish and dwarven builders to build those really funky traps uh, to keep the intruders out, and have their treasures kept for them. Mike says, boo, boo, boo. A local Arctic briar grew locally that provided emergency sustenance. This twisting black thorny briar became the tattoo pattern they would wear. It symbolized their resilience and survival against all odds. Side note: the briar. Side note: the briar. Let's pull this up. The briar end needles were peeled, had a chewy pith that tasted like black licorice root, and had a high level of vitamin C. That's wow, that's a lot of detail. But I love it though, right? Sometimes it's the little small things that stick to you. Oh, your spell check's going off. I hear it. I see it. The culture of Dragonborn lived alongside an Arctic kobold variant nicknamed snowbolds. Okay, the snowbolds were the typically the religious side of their culture, becoming the shamans among the larger Dragonborn. Ah, this is another thing too that. All right, you guys know that there is a there's a simple thing to do when it comes to being a publisher that gets you a lot of pop. It's like the rock stars that come out on stage and it's like, "Hey everybody," and they yell out the city name and everyone like screams. And of course you can get booed if you yell out the wrong city because they've just moved driving around in a tour van. But that easy pop exists in the tabletop role playing uh, uh, community, and one of those easy pops are monster books. Anything that gives player options, anything like character options, subclasses, spells, some magic items, extra feats, and but monster books are huge. And one of the things that you can really do to cheat on the publication part of it, or rather, if you don't really want to spend any money, is to just refinagle the races and monsters that you already have, and just make them environmentally appropriate. The fact that like Mike's talking about snowbolts. You know, um, the minute that you think about it, with the white scales, maybe a little fur, shocking blue eyes. They're hiding in the snow, and all you can see are their nostrils and their eyes slightly poking above a snowdrift. But when the blizzard comes in, they disappear. And just being able to twist and turn your kobolds or your bugbears or uh, hill giants or whatever, and manipulate them according to the environment, is just an easy way to take your, let's say you have 80 monsters, and multiply it by what, 10, 12, if you could start thinking about different environments. uh, Urban, mountainous, coastal, completely aquatics, swamp like, rainforests, desert, like. And if you really really start to stretch them out, adding in some culture on top of the physical manifestation, you've got yourself a ton of extra monsters. Change some of their movement values, some of their damage potentials, things like that. Co-host Mike says the character I played from this was, sorry about this, DBJ, was uh, Rosvazon. His tribe. Yeah. Thanks for apologizing up front, because I know I'm going to butcher the pronunciations. I often put the incorrect syllable on the using the wrong emphasis. His tribe were the Raketh, which means they who do not shiver. Ooh. The eyes of the Dragonborn were inky black, which could be disturbing to others because they had difficulty knowing which direction he was looking. Yeah, yeah. Anything that where you can't see their eyeballs, but they are looking around, but you can't tell they're looking around, like insects, is pretty. There's a slight little body horror in that, uh, uh, using like prosthetics and movie magic and whatnot, and it works very well for predators as also. And of course, any creature that's out in doesn't want to get snow blinded, or having a, I don't know, sharp, getting their eyes pelted with ice or something like that, having some unblinking monstrosity out there staring at you through the snow. You see black beady eyes. It's kind of cool. And I think when it comes to like monstrous races, the idea of not just exploring the environment, but the the needs of the monstrous race versus humans. Like, for example, finding. I used the face of a turtle for the thumbnail, and it made me think of like here in the States, there are agencies that try to protect turtles because the turtles come onto land, they come across a beach, they try to find a place far away from humanity, and they dig themselves a little pit and they lay their eggs down in the sand, covering up with sand, and then they crawl all the way back out into the ocean. And of course, when their eggs hatch, they they hatch lots of little baby turtles because many of them can't get out of the shells or dig their way up to the surface. And then when they do dig themselves up to the surface through the soft sand, they have to crawl down the beach out into the ocean. And lots of predators kind of wait for them, birds and predatory birds and crabs and things like that may try to eat them. And there are, of course, nonprofit organizations to try to save the turtles and get them out into the ocean. But the point of me thinking about that was this particular creature living out in the ocean for hundreds of years makes its way onto a beach to dig a pit to lay their eggs. And player characters, you could kind of play on that with player characters. Like, if I don't know, if you even if you wanted to go so far as to have a player character play, like, hey, you can only show up once every other game. Here's your owlbear. Like, you're not even playing a character, you're playing a monster or something. Here's your owlbear, and he's like, man, I'm not going to be able to play in the game for the next month or so. Hey, my owlbear is going to go find a cave to hibernate in, or like a squirrel. Hey, I'm going to gather all my seeds and nuts and hide them in a tree, or my Aarakocra character is going to fly up and put the last finishing touches on their nest up in the mountains or whatever. And I think I don't know, I find it, rather than having a classic tavern and blacksmith or something, there could be something out in the wilds, or heck, if you want to go extra dimensional, maybe there's a place in the nine hells or something for the character's tiefling and their warlock patron to be invited to maybe a place down in the nether regions or whatever that's hidden away. And I don't know, it'd be kind of cool to have a little base of operations or a player character that looks at everybody like, it's this season, all that stuff I've been collecting. Yeah, well, I'm gonna take you to my little clubhouse or something, and it could be kind of a cool reward. Mike says he would eat everything raw and a little frozen. Ooh. My DM at the time allowed me to use a tiny portion of the cold breath to chill food without losing charges in the breath weapon. I wouldn't even argue that point, right? I, that's just flavor to me. I'd be like, yeah, of course you could do that. Anyway, he ate a cold or frozen fish constantly. He had no knowledge of why people live in boxes. Houses, exactly. So he would sleep on roofs or lawns. Since I saw these dragonborn with tails, which help with swimming, I don't know why there's a weird undercurrent of like, should dragonborn have tails or not have tails? Of course they have tails, and I'm sticking with that. Anyway, saw these dragonborn with tails, which help with swimming, would curl up like a dog when he slept. If he had treasure, he would sleep on that. Yeah, of course, of course. Like, and it's those are little things. I think a lot of what I'm trying to get across is most of it is just probably pretty narrative that would have near zero breakability within the game, but would be kind of cool. I mean, a player character sleeping in the rafters of a house, or a player character looking for the crawl space or basement of a house to go down there and take a nap or something. The classic ranger that goes up in a tree and is like, I'm gonna camp up in the tree. And some dungeon masters are like, well, you can't just sleep up in a tree. And it's like, yeah, you might as well just let them do it. What are you going to make them make acrobatics checks every 15 minutes, or they're going to fall out the tree if they sleep? It's rule of cool on those kind of things. And I feel like there are those spaces where the stories are told, especially if you want to, say, allow maybe some of those monstrous race characters to have some sort of community with the animalistic or bestial or monstrous creatures that are already out there. And no, they don't have to be best friends, but they might have there might be some kind of community or instinctual connection, whether it's through predator or prey or similar living standards. And you could play it, you could tell a lot of stories with that too. Deadman says praying mantis or thrycreen eyes. Ooh, large skin or exoskeleton colored eyes with two pinpoint pupils that are easily overlooked. Oh yeah, the double pupil eyes. Oh, or the what's the chameleon eyes that move independently of each other? Yeah, those are cool though. I like that. Mm-mm-mm-mm-mm. Yeah, like Mike Gould says, Tabaxi should be sleeping in odd places like trees. If it fits, it sits. Exactly. And maybe taking their meals up there too. A player character, Tabaxi, is like, yeah, I'm not sleeping in the camp. I'm going up in the tree and I'm going to take my, I don't know, my half-eaten antelope or something up there with me, right? Oh, Pelora says goat eyes are weird too. Aren't they I'm gonna call them infinity symbol. They're like it's like they look like they're splitting. And I think hippopotami have odd eyes too, that they are like upper lower eyelid eyes that are able to see both underwater, and the upper part of their eyes able to see above the water level because of the distortion or something. It's really bizarre. But if a player said, what's a new yeah, Plur says pretty much infinity symbol. Yeah, I mean, if a player came to me and said, well, I want to play like a Loxodon, which is another player character ancestry or race, or maybe modify a version of what's the other one, the turtle, and say, hey, I want to play a hippopotamus or something like that, I'd be like, hell yeah. Yeah, of course you could. And what great stories you can play. And one of the things I think with being able to pull on, like, we're talking about a lot of the natural environment, and my suggestion about having them have a relationship could be, maybe lizard folk have an instinctual territorial connection with alligators or something, and you wanted to insert like alligators into the world, and you want them dangerous, but maybe the lizard folk kind of like, I don't know, I don't want to say smell them out or sniff them out, but they're like, maybe a player character looks around at the swamp and it's like, yeah, there's a bunch of alligators in here. And they just know it, it's not a perception thing. It's like, yeah, if I was a giant alligator, I'd probably be in that swampy area right there. And other players are like, well, how do you know? And you're just like, believe you me, our people have lived here a long time, and it's not the place you want to be. And yeah. Mm-mm-mm. Mike says, yeah, goat eyes are horizontal slits. Frog eyes are like the infinity symbol. I could be wrong. It's not like I raise goats. No, you're fine. Mm-mm-mm-mm. Sorry about the clicky. Deadman says, Kroll, the turtle cleric of Tiamat from Forgotten Realms setting. I posted a link in the Discord. Ooh, 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 ooh. Oh, cool. Let me see if I can get this bigger. Yeah, it won't be difficult to see. Ooh, look at. Sorry, I know you guys can't see it and I know it won't really show up if I show it to you. But that image is pretty cool because the shell's all spiky with like runes on it and stuff. Yeah. Now, again, my problem sometimes with monstrous races are they always seem to come across as special snowflakes. It's one of the reasons initially when 5th edition introduced the Aarakocra and they had flying as their natural movement, and everyone like blew a gasket, like, you can't have a player character at first level with flying. It's going to ruin my game. And I'm thinking, well, it, sure, if they're the only flying thing in the world, right? But if you're introducing flying races in your world, there has to be, or should be, a community of those creatures. I don't know. You guys are going down the the Jacques Cousteau, the nature channel. You're right, Mike. Most of them are just a bar. Some of them bulge into a more infinity symbol sort of thing as well. Yeah, Deadman says the runes carved into the shell are prayers to Tiamat. Yeah, I what a cool thing to do. I mean, I suppose you could reskin a bunch of things, like maybe reskin a turtle as a hermit crab with a finding a new seashell. Maybe they go up and as they advance to different levels, they find another seashell with their like spell, the runes carved on their back, like spells or glyphs or something like that. That'd be kind of cool. It's kind of a cool idea. Or maybe a crab like player character. Mike says, well, looking at the symbiotic relationship between certain animals, monstrous races might have similar relationships. Consider the tiny birds that clean crocodile teeth. Yep. Yeah, 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 yeah. The tiny birds, they literally walk inside the mouths of crocodiles as the crocodiles. That's just a weird but cool symbiotic relationship because the birds get a great place to eat, right? To get to clean the teeth. And the alligator's like, I'm already done. I have no fear of the birds. I don't need to eat them. I don't need to expend the energy, but they sure do keep my teeth nice and sharp, right? Lizard folk might have similar relationships with a species of swamp beetle or bird. And we see this often a lot in nature, right? Like where you'll see herd animals, but there's like small birds or insects riding on the back of them because they get to eat all the grubs and ticks off out of their fur and whatnot. And player characters might be the exact same way. What a great excuse to have a familiar for your lizard folk, right? When your lizard's laying on the rock, a nice warm rock, because of course, if your lizard folk are very reptilian, they don't have an internal temperature gauge that they have to lay out in the sun. Maybe their familiar is just like a raven or something that's just hangs around them, eating off like dead skin or something like that. Little grubs and mites before your lizard folk or something goes from third to fourth level and they shed their skin by rubbing up against a rock or whatnot. Or actually, it could be a ritual. Maybe their family and friends come together and peel their skin, and they get just a little bit bigger because they got a +1 strength ASI. Pelor says there's a lizard folk race in within the Ring of Fire who drag a pyramid temple city around with them. Ooh, I haven't heard of within the Ring of Fire in a while. But yes, there is the top of my head, I lost a lot of the information about Within the Ring of Fire. For those who don't know, Within the Ring of Fire is a role playing game, and it does embrace the idea that there are player character racial choices where they literally eat other races or species within that setting, and a lot of it is pretty it's bizarre because it's literally a world that was like half formed by the gods. I think there's like a website called "In the Hands of Angry Gods" or something like that, or "The Fists of Angry." I think it's "Within the Hands of Angry Gods." That's really good. It's got a great background to it, and it uses a 2d8 system, 2d8 exploding die system. Pretty interesting. Deadman says the bird is called the Egyptian plovers. Ooh. Hmm. Wonder if a player character could be one of those birds that eats out of the mouths of giant alligators for food, and they don't even think that it's dangerous. They just hop inside the mouth of a giant alligator and start eating, and the player character is like, "What the hell are you doing?" They're like, "I'm getting something to eat. Come on, join me." Inside the mouth. Come on, you want to. Mike says, or consider the relationship between sharks and pilot fish, and Remoraz. The relationship might translate to Sahogan. Yeah, exactly. I mean, we see schools of fish that kind of navigate together, or there are there's too many to think of, but uh, my brain is thinking of the flood season with all the animals that go to the rivers that are trying to breed and eat, and you have like alligators and antelopes and monkeys and all kinds all gathering together in a single location, both needing to get gather together but also afraid of each other, and that kind of thing. Yeah, especially if, like, a lot of predators, after they eat, they're very docile after they've eaten, so that other creatures that are prey are comfortable around them after some of the predators have eaten because they have to digest what they've eaten, so they are no longer a threat any longer. Michael says actually molting should be a big deal amongst scaly species. Yeah, exactly. It's either a time of vulnerability or rebirth. Dragonborn, kobolds, lizardfolk, and some Yuan Ti might see this completely differently. I could see it as I could see that done as like a cultural thing, like family, friends, religion, something where you start to molt and shed might be considered something. It could be uh, conversely amongst more of human society. It might feel like it's something very private, like embarrassing almost to start to molt around your family and your non non reptilian family and friends, and it's like I got to leave. I'll be back in a couple days. And they're like, why? I don't want to talk about it. It's embarrassing. And maybe they do have to molt and peel their skins or something. Or maybe if player characters find that as evidence somewhere, they know that there's lizard folk because they see their skins in the trees or something like that. Like, I don't know. It could be. It could be any number of those reasons. Let's see. Mike says turtles may need to lose a shell once or twice during one's life, depending on the subspecies. This would be a huge deal since the shell is their life. Yeah, yeah. That's why I was thinking about the the turtle reskinned as like a hermit crab, and the player character. And this is all like narrative storytelling. I would never take advantage of a player character, but it would be kind of cool for like um, the reason why a player character turtle could fit into a small place because they got out of their shell and decided to go with the players, and everyone's looking at them like you have a funny looking body. I'm so used to look at your shell, and the turtle player character's like, stop staring at me. You leave their shell outside. Their shell becomes like their own apparatus of qualish or something. Mm-mm-mm. Archive of Nethys says, I mean, those birds are kind of good of a good metaphor for what adventurers are already. Yeah, like I'm gonna walk into the mouth of an alligator. You think that's smart? Player characters like what is smart? Yeah, you're right. Plur says molting came up in my game yesterday. Really? Specifically, a PC's lizardy pet molting and being vulnerable during and for a few days after the molt while the scales reharden. Ooh, I could see that being a again taking like things in nature and warping them into a cultural basis, because when, if I'm not mistaken, when reptilian creatures molt, the skin underneath, of course, has not been exposed to the elements. This is exactly what they're doing. And so once the old skin comes off, which theoretically is useless now, depending on your setting and how you want to do it, the skin underneath is like the baby skin. And so maybe there are like salves or oils, or they have to, I could imagine something akin to like saunas or hot stones, or maybe there's hot bath, cold baths or something they have to take or whatever to quickly harden their skins because they could be extremely vulnerable to the elements. Like it could be very painful as well, meaning you know the hardened skin of a player character that's like an alligator. Maybe their lizard folk is more like alligator, like with hardened scales. But when they molt, they're like, ooh, it feels like my skin's sensitive or something. Heck, you could even play around with like, I suppose you could mechanically have a feature during that time, like, oh, during this time, my character loses this one thing, but I gain this other thing, and talk to your, of course, game master about it. But it would be kind of cool to have fun with that. Mike says feathered species like Kenku and Aarakocra might have, although I guess you could pronounce it Aarakocra. Anyway, feathered species like Kenku and Aarakocra might have molting issues as well, which may be handled in exactly the same way. Yeah, family, friends, maybe there's a thing where the feathers get pulled or preened away. Lots of animals do that collectively, where they they preen each other naturally for different reasons, pulling like the feathers and cleaning them, and maybe we in nature you see a lot of birds doing the whole bird bathing kind of thing as well. So if you have an avian creatures, and of course player characters adventuring might find groups of feathers or things that give them clues as to tribes or the nature of a thing, or maybe a player character is a an avian kinku and finds something and realizes that maybe their people are nearby, or maybe there's enemies or something, and they use the maybe the feathers are collected for a specific reason, given as gifts to allies or whatnot, or used to mark territory or something. Yeah. Mike says, I can see lizard folk either discarding or eating the molted skin ritually, whereas kobolds waste nothing. Kobold molts will be woven into things like belts and straps. Dragonborn, depending on the culture, might see this as a religious experience. Exactly. And again, who's to say that like for example, like lizard folk might not become dragonborn? We already know about there is a uh, um, thin in-world transition of kobolds and dragons, of the smaller scaly people becoming the bigger ones. That's a very good reason for, like, I don't know, goblins becoming hobgoblins. Not exactly sure. I don't know what the quote unquote real origin of hobgoblins are versus goblins, but something like that could be a religious experience as well. Looking forward to the time when uh, I don't know, they break out of a cocoon, or they go into a some kind of stasis or whatnot. Mm-mm-mm. Mike, I'm sorry. Dead Man says, in real life, turtles have very few bones inside their shell. So a turtle skeleton it is a big shell, the legs and tail and the head and neck. Yeah, yeah, because they have an exoskeleton, right? Like insects too. Insects don't have an internal bone structure. Technically, their bone structure is on the outside of their bodies, and insectoid races might be the same way, where someone of their race passes away and their shell is still left, and the shell is, depending on their culture, maybe their shell is saved for use with other things, or maybe there are other people that are like, get the beetle shell, we can make shields out of it or something like that. The Thri-Creens are like, would you please stop doing that? That's like wearing our skin. We don't wear human skin. Plur says you could use a molt as a rite of passage. Say in a lizard folk society, like on your 10th molt, you have to go out into the swamp for 10 days and fend for yourself, showing resilience while vulnerable. Ooh, ooh. What a great way to explain why maybe Dragonborn in your world shift chromatic and metallic dragon types. It's not because you're born into one, but when you molt, you might go through an experience or an environment that changes you into another draconic type. That might be a way. Hmm. Let's see if that can come. Carapace, the turtle shell. I'm looking at it right now. Right now, Dead Man. The turtle shell is a shield for the ventral and dorsal parts of turtles. Uh, Completely enclosing all the vital organs of the turtle, and in some cases, even the head. It is constructed of modified bony elements such as the ribs, parts of the pelvis, and other bones found in most reptiles. The bone of the shell consists of both. And, I wonder, hmm, hmm, a turtle player character casts Leomund's tiny hut, and everyone walks inside the shell, including the turtle. And the turtle, I mean, not this would, of course, would be completely non-biological, but it would be kind of fun. It's like, hey, could my portable hole or bag of holding be inside of my shell? And I'd have to shake my head like, God, I hate that idea. Yes, of course you can, because it sounds cool. Oh man, thanks, Dead Man. Yeah, coming of age, like Mike was responding about the culture might see this as a religious experience, or like Plura says, a coming of age story. That'd be kind of cool. Yeah, like maybe a dragonborn that I don't know uh, shoves their hand into brass, being molten brass or something, becomes a brass metallic dragonborn at that time, or becomes a white dragonborn when left out, and they molt and they go out into the wilds of the blasted north with blizzards or whatnot. Uh, Mike says it's a bit graphic, but orc of the Iron League and Thol might, after death, be skinned. The skins are displayed in the Hall of Elders, with each skin being a record of scars, tattoos, and such, and tell the tale of an orc's heroic deeds. Having a heroic orc's body lost to some death or tragedy is a major problem. And I think when it we would I think there's space to tell some great stories and have some great action if we divorce ourselves of our modern day context of cannibalism and skinning and things of that nature, because lots of animals handle injury and death a lot differently, or for good reasons, than human beings. And if we may turn those, twist those into cultural aspects, like, for example, flies and maggots, right? So could you imagine like an insectoid species takes down a huge monstrous animal, and then they put out a call with pheromones or sounds or something, a big buzzing goes through the air, and members of the race come and start laying their eggs inside of the carcass of like a dead, I don't know, blue dragon or something like that, so that they could uh, maintain the species, so that the maggots can grow and eat and feed upon the dead flesh of the blue dragon until they then transform into, or eat enough to transform into flies, which would be the insectoid species. Of course, all this written large. Um, and for outsiders, they might look at this not just as a menace, but like pretty foul. But for the species, they're like, this is what we do. Like, that's not, like you're talking about the orcs and skinning their dead to hang the skins up so people can be proud of it. This might just be a normal thing. And lots of species of animals eat their own young. They eat the carcasses of their own dead. Come on, producer. Come on. Psst, psst, psst. Come on. Come on up. Yeah. Yeah. That's yeah. Exactly. Sorry. Sophia Loren, my producer, is drawing some of my attention here. Sorry about that, guys. Yes, Kitty. Yes, yes, yes. I have a. She eats and then I brush her down to calm her down, because she likes the brushing, and it seems that I didn't give her enough this morning. Oh man. All right. Vampanoy mentions Turtle Cast Magnificent Mansion. Oh no, and it's a huge shell. Players see the turtle PC in like a bathrobe. Yeah, of course. Yeah. Come come everyone. Have a glass of champagne. And they're just like, what? Could you imagine, like, because normally you think of Ninja Turtles, and turtles have the shell, and yes, biologically their shell is their skeleton, but it would be kind of funny to see their body outside of the shell. Looks like maybe it's super sexy or muscular, or maybe it's really really skinny, and the PC's like the brick of the group, but without the shell, they're just like, you don't have any fat on you at all. They're like, stop making fun. Sitting there in like a bathrobe and playing like soft music inside their magnificent mansion. And the player's like, please don't invite me inside anymore. You're all invited inside me. Oof. Maybe I shouldn't have said that one. Michael says orcs of the Iron League strive to one day have the rare chance to have their deeds displayed. Ooh, it means their relatively short lives live on in the memories of the children and stories. It's a way to mimic. It's a way to mimic immortality through record keeping after a fashion. Uh, immortality is such a sentient culture thing, right? I mean, the basis of lots of animals is to breed, to keep their young alive, and how amazing do we find it when supposedly predatory or solitary animals give birth, and even instinctually, no, producers don't get on. No, you're not talent. You don't get on screen, not this time. Um, a lot of those type of animals sit back and train their young. So how cool would it be for a monstrous raced character to be raised and trained and even have an ally of a what we would consider a mindless or bestial monster, like okay, player character was born an Aarakocra character was born out of the shell in a clutch of eggs that was protected by like a giant rock or griffins or something like that. And that player character, like the monster, might not even be intelligent in the concept of us thinking of it being intelligent, but maybe like when the player character goes and flies back to their mountain area or something and they see that griffin just knows it's one of their own. Or you could even have some fun. I could see having some fun with like a clutch of eggs, and the player character was born from a clutch of eggs from like lizard folk or dragonborn, and there's other, maybe not dragons, what are worms, drakes, serpents, or something that happen to be allies of the player characters, and like NPCs, just using monsters as NPCs alongside the monstrous races. Like, for example, if you want to go, let's go arcane, let's go with tieflings. And maybe there are hideously monstrous monsters out there, like what's some good ones, like nightmares or hellhounds or something. And one of the hellhounds like breathing fire and their paws are on fire, then comes up to one of the tiefling player characters, starts licking his face and is like wagging its tail, his little flaming tail and stuff like that. Oh man, yeah, that would be kind of cool. Like Mike says, animals in the wild might adopt. It happens. This may happen between grunge and bullywogs as well. Yeah, it's bullywogs, right? Oh, I see your spell check hit it. Yeah, we need to have. You know what? We need to have a fantasy sci-fi spell checker. Because 99% of the stuff we talk about does not fit into normal vocal patterns, because people who are outside of the community or listen in or read stuff, they're like, what the hell are they talking about? We need to have a new one, like, all right, Samsung or Cortana or whatever it is. Yeah. No, but yes, it could be that way. Like bullywogs being adopted by giant frogs and things of that nature. And what a great way to go back and forth between the player characters and the monsters, where the player characters comes upon a clutch of eggs and the player is like, shit, like we better, I'm gonna stay here and protect these eggs. And you're like, what are you talking about? Like, these are our people, or at least culturally related to our people, right? Maybe the player character knows that every one of those eggs is going to grow into a frogmoth or something like that. And they're like, listen, I know they're dangerous, but there's also, my swampy bullywog character is a swamp like druid or ranger or something. And it's like, yeah, but the natural process is we let them, it's a good omen to be the person to protect those eggs, despite the fact that they might become predators in the future. What a great way to gift a character. Hell, you maybe the player character keeps the egg around for a couple of levels before you, as the dungeon master, allow it to hatch, and the player character gets you know I don't know, graduates up to a gift of having this pet or monster or something like that. That'd be kind of, I don't know. I don't know. You really can't break most games if you really think about it, because as the dungeon master, you can always just add more numbers. Dead man's like, the kobolds named Human, 3 kobold siblings in a trench coat. Yeah. All stacked on each other, walking around. I'd like to buy some alcohol and cigarettes. Yeah. Minotaur behind the counter is like, I've seen this before, guys. The goblins down the street did the same thing. Yep. Human. Vampanoid says half orc religion does account for reincarnation. Part of their belief is that they go through trials to become stronger in their next life. They go as far as to get insulted by receiving unsolicited help because it's like denying them advancement. Excuse me. It's like denying them advancement. Ooh, shit. For their future lives. What? Yes. What I actually that makes a lot of sense to allow players to change or shift their racial features if you within game there is a type of advancement due to say reincarnation or um, what is the term from a caterpillar to a butterfly? Um, the act of transitioning of a metamorphosis of sorts to go from one to the next. I think there's some great stories in there. And guess what? Remember the time when we talked about good reasons why players can't come to the game, and one of them might be, yeah, Thank you guys. Yeah, you guys said metamorphosis too. I'm sure you thought it and said it before I did. It just took a while before it to come into the chat. Yeah. Um, but maybe the player character can't show because they're going through a metamorphosis, right? Like, yeah, my centipede character is going to transform into a moth character, and I can't show up at this game, but maybe next game. And you're like, oh well, get rid of these stats and pick these other stats. Mm-mm-mm-mm-mm. Mm-mm-mm. Mike says, quote, there aren't enough trees to make enough arrows to kill us all. We'll simply breed you out. Yeah, some people get scared. Might get scared of the goblinoids out there in the wilds because of that. Also, something that could be a touchy issue in game is the idea of breeding in general amongst any of the races. But if we separate the problematic gender issues we have amongst humanity, real world humanity, and put them out into a more of a fantastical realm, there's some things about that as well. Maybe a player character goes through a period of time where they have to come back and seed the eggs or something, or in the game within the Ring of Fire, there was a god that used to there was a godling that used to be the god of lions and then became the god of humanity and expected every male member of humans, specifically humans, to find 7 wives, and to the idea was to birth 7 children from all 7 wives. And the godling was was a god of industry and was trying to breed humans to overtake the realm. And within the Ring of Fire, humans were a minority. Numerically and power wise, humans they're just one of a number of monstrous races in that world. And I thought that was an interesting thing, like human beings breeding like a plague across the landscape because the god said so. And I was like, ooh. Yeah, like the thank you, dead man. Metamorphosis via chrysalis, like the Minbari of Babylon 5. Exactly. Player characters might be I can imagine a story where the player characters maybe need to protect others, or what a great narrative element for a player character to go into their shell or spin something around them during their I don't know if you want to do this all the time, but maybe their long rest doesn't look like a meditation for a monk or reading a book like a wizard. Maybe they go into a metamorphosized state of some sort, or it might just be simply a hybridative or hibernation type state where they don't want to be bothered by anyone, and you see them like curling amongst themselves, or they shift their shape, or whatever the case might be. They exude some kind of chemical, uh, whatever the case might be. The other day, talking about spider people, maybe the PC spider like person weaves a big cocoon so that they can lay a bunch of spider eggs on their back and they carry around like a backpack or something. Mm-mm-mm. Whom empowers orcs to go forth and breed with whatever. Yeah, yep. That's where you get yourself some half orcs. Although there's always half orcs have always been um, half orcs have always been like half orc, half human. But I'm depending on sustainability. I could see half orcs being like half orc, half um, elven, and half orc, half gnomish, or half dwarven. I don't know. Mike says I can remember a live chat on Matt Koval's channel. He's against the idea of half races because it doesn't work that way. I can remember asking if he read the lore of Lothric, the orc goddess. Yeah, well, it's I, a long. Maybe we could revisit this because it was suggested to me by Mike Moldesky to revisit some of our themes, and we could talk about half breeds because there's a lot of things that go into half breeds in our world that we could extrapolate into a fantasy world. Like, for example, maybe dwarves and gnomes just don't make children. Maybe they're unviable children, right? It's possible they can't breed together. They can have lots of sexual, conquest, but they can't do. Yeah, well, that's it. Right. It depends on your setting. Like Mike says, well, to be honest, Tasha's custom lineage can make almost anything. And if you accept the fact that you can make almost anything, that's cool in your game. But maybe someone says, well, these particular races can't breed together. Or you can make the decision that if two races breed together, it comes out one or the other. Like if a gnome and a dwarf get together, they're not half and half. They either give birth to a gnome or a dwarf. And some of that is narrative too, right? Like, for example, the argument of Tyrion Lannister in Game of Thrones is human, but is he a halfling? If you wanted to make him as a character, right? Just because the person is one race doesn't mean they don't have the racial features mechanically of another one. So a small human might have the racial features of a halfling in a fantasy realm, and so on and so forth, right? Like maybe a dwarf was born with all of the racial features of a gnome, but they're dwarf genetically and everything. So, and there's other things too, like for example, stillbirths, mutations, uh, sexual proclivity. Maybe certain races just don't have any sexual desires to be with each other for any reason, so they just don't breed. There's no breeding between them because they just don't want to do it. It could be cultural as well, so there's a lot of things like that. AG says Punfar, the Vulcan reproductive cycle changed the way Spock behaved. Different biology brings about different impulses and behavior. Oh yeah, they sure do. Yep. Mike even says, to be honest, sorry, I'm considering a dragonborn based on the fairy dragon to make a fey dragonborn. Exactly. Yep. Yep. Mike says it's reasons like this that I ask for the DM's current world lore, just to know when I'm coloring outside the lines. Exactly. Now, mind you, a player character could be a one-off. A fey dragonborn, as you talking about, could be an example. Like in my world of a Rowan tieflings are fey origined. They're not infernally origined. So a player might ask me something about that and go like, well, what about this thing and this other thing? And I go, yeah, well, no, but yes, but no. So and also there's the idea as well that if a player is a one-off, we instead of having things reach under our skin. And so many people are like fold arms, pouty lipped. They're messing with my traditional races. Instead, I think it's opportunities for us to think of other things. For example, why does a race need to be something you're born into? You could be transformed into it or cursed. It could be a religious transformation into a higher form. Like, for example, a cleric player character might become Asimar due to becoming a saint, or a player might be bitten by something and gain. This is a way of explaining lycanthropy. And at fifth level, what did you do? You just went, you took your digital aspect and went, let me erase this off my player character. I write in the new stats and new thing, and you're done, right? So there's all kinds of like transitions and spells. Like maybe your wizard character, it as a in-game mechanical feature, your druid or wizard has used arcane magic to transform themselves into another racial type that has flowed throughout their body, and periodically they can change things. If you really want to go even further with it, if you as a dungeon master really want to go for this thing, you could even let a player maybe after every long rest change their race. And maybe there's like you can pick these three races because it fits into your character concept, and you could change them, but you got to make the decision up front as you flow from one thing to another. Vampanoid says, I have a small half centaur minotaur character that's just a variant human. Yep. Looks just like a human. No one believed her till they met her NPC brother who had centaur body with a minotaur head. Yep. Why not? Yeah, why not? Stagatar. Excuse me. Man, Dead Miss is the stag tar. Centaur with a stag head added in 5e. Didn't know that. Didn't. Sorry. Ooh, now I've got hiccups. AG says, I believe in old school rune quests. Dragons weren't born as such, but had to reincarnate into different forms in a trial of ascension into dragonhood. Good example, good reasoning. Hey, my character gets to 20th level, and we go on the last campaign, 21st level, I become a dragon. Become like maybe a legendary dragon in the world. Why not? Mm-mm-mm. Mike says, in one campaign, I had a kobold PC literally go through a cocoon metamorphosis to become a dragonborn as part of the lore of a kobold society. This was done. This was done with the player's consent, of course. Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, you could do this with. We've already seen this done in what is it, Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, where player characters could become vampiric, lycanthropic, and whatnot. And all it is just character options. You make sure they're balanced amongst other player options, and just allow them to switch out one thing for another. And why not let a player character lose 2 points of wisdom and a point of constitution to replace that with 2 extra points of strength and a point of dex because they've become more bestial or something. And then what they have natural weapons for claws or something. You know what I mean? Like you could go through a bunch of mixing and matching if you want to in your game world. I know this isn't kind of where we were going, but yeah. Anyway, guys, I got to head off to work. But thank you very much. Just as a reminder, as we get out of here, that uh, a lot of things. The Creators Conclave is slowly and surely coming together. I know those who are members of the clave are might be like, I have no idea what I'm supposed to be doing here, or might not feel for it. Here comes that ghoul fly. Yeah. But it's coming along. This is in a world in which we want instant gratification. This is a project that is long term. And to talk about the Creators Conclave and everyone, a bunch of different creators getting together to actively and passively raise each other up statistically. There is ENWorld, and ENWorld, many people know about ENWorld. 25 Kickstarters, been around for since like 2000 or something like that. Everyone knows that ENWorld is a blog and a forum, and they have the Any Awards and whatnot, but they also have a Kickstarter. And I am part of the Level Up 5e Kickstarter, so I'm just proud of what's going to come out. Of course, I'm going to push it because I was a contributing writer, a small bit of. When you see the third pillar part of it, that it's got a little bit of my sense into it. I don't think I'll be invited back again to write for them, which I kind of agree with them in that decision. But yeah, I really appreciate it. The time I had with them. So yeah, yeah, I love it. So guys, check that out as well. Anyway, guys, have a great one. Thank you very much for being part of the show. I've got to get out of here. You guys have a great one. Of course, tomorrow's Future Friday.